Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me. If you've been here over the last few months, you've probably heard me at some point pitching this hackathon that I was working on. It finally happened about 10 days ago. And so I'm really excited to share with everybody how it went. A few people from Civic Tech came. So at the end, I will have a couple of them share what their experiences were like. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit about the hackathon, what happened, and some of the things that I learned through the process. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is why I wanted to do this in the first place. So it's kind of a combination of two different things that were coming together at the right moment in my life. One is that I had quit my job. I was feeling really burnt out from working in the startup world. And one of the many components that led to that was just feeling really frustrated by the types of problems that I felt like I was having opportunities to work on. In particular, at the last job that I had, I was looking around at the people working at that company. They were some of like the most brilliant, capable people that I had ever worked with. And we were working on what felt to me, it was a B2B SaaS company, what to me felt like an okay problem. Like it was a real problem, it existed, and we were selling the software, but I felt like there's such bigger problems in the world, and why couldn't people like this be working on those problems or spending more of their time working on those types of problems? And so one day I was walking my dog and listening to an episode of one of my favorite podcasts called Tech Won't Save Us, which is sort of a critical tech podcast, some nodding heads. So I think some people here have listened to it. And the particular episode I was listening to that day was about fast fashion. And they were telling the story of how social media has created this environment for fast fashion to just explode because people love sharing a different outfit every day with their social media following, and that some of these products, not all of them, but some of the products that come from these fast fashion companies are made kind of so poorly and so cheaply that they're not even really designed to be worn out of the house. They're designed for you to take a picture of them. They look good in photos and to be shown on social media. And basically the problem with this is really just the waste that it creates. And that was the problem that they were concerned about and talking about on the podcast. And I was feeling kind of overwhelmed. It felt like this like feedback cycle that was just going to be getting worse and worse with this particular problem of like social media and fast fashion working together. And I had this feeling of like, I feel like there are things that you could do to like interrupt this process and to make it better. And I feel like the types of people I work with, the types of people I went to grad school with, I went to grad school for HCI, know how to do this. We have the problem solving skills to do this, but we don't really have the opportunity. We don't really have the space and the time. And so that was when I had this idea to host a hackathon, to create a space for people working in tech with tech skills to use their knowledge, their experience, and their tools to work on a problem that was a little bit more socially impactful than at least most of the problems I had had the chance to work on so far in my career. So that was why I wanted to do this. So it actually happened. It really went incredibly. That was sort of like the first question everybody asks me that I didn't put into the slides was, how did it go? It went amazing. There were like several moments throughout those 2 days where I was like pinching myself. I couldn't believe it was real. It was really, really special experience. And some of the details, so it was October 31st and November 1st. That was a Thursday, Friday. There were 19 participants in the end, which was really incredible. I think probably some of the people here who've hosted events know this, but people sign up really late. And so on the Sunday before the event, I had 10 people signed up. So I was really like so pleasantly surprised and happy when it ended up being 19 people. There were 7 project teams. So project teams ranging from like 1 person to 5 people was the biggest, working on all kinds of different projects. I'll give you a little preview of what some of those were a little bit later in the presentation. There were 2 expert speakers. On the first day, we had a researcher from U of T who studies smartphone addiction, and he shared some of the context around the problem of smartphone addiction, as well as some of the things that they've tested and some of the models that they look at of how to create interventions to that. And then on the second day, we had a speaker who is a public teaching speaker at the Second City, and he was giving advice to people on their pitch presentations for the second day. Everybody was going to be pitching their project. And I just thought it's always like a handy skill to have somebody or to have the opportunity to improve that skill. So the agenda, both days we started off with the speakers. On the first day, right after the speaker, we had some people pitch ideas. So either ideas that they came in with that they wanted to work on to solve this problem, or things that were sparked by listening to the speaker. And then we broke out into a sort of coffee break, social time for people to talk with each other and connect, form teams, bounce around their ideas. I think that was one of like the coolest moments of the whole thing. It sort of had this like electric energy of so many ideas bouncing around and people connecting with each other. And that also, I sent out some feedback forms. I think most people who attended agreed that that was one of the really special moments of the whole experience. Then people formed their groups, worked on their projects, and in the afternoon of the second day, we did the final presentations and got to see what everybody had been working on. So this was the prompt. This was the problem statement that we were all working on. How might we build tools to change our relationship with addictive technology? And so I will just give a very brief description of a few of the projects. Like I said, there were 7 projects. There really wouldn't be time for me to explain them all. And I even feel a little bit badly because I don't know if I can do them justice the way that the teams who worked on them did. But I chose 3 projects that really each took a very different angle on solving the problem, just to give you a taste of the kind of solutions that people came up with. So the first one, they came up with an app called Screen Climb. And the idea was to create a place where you could create competitions between you and your friends, or you and your family, of who could reduce their screen time the most. I thought it was a really cool idea because of the way that it sort of tapped into the gamification thing that so often is like creating some of the phone addiction, but using it in a way to help people get off their phones, and that sense of competition that would help people really figure out what tactics they themselves needed to use to get off their phone more, because maybe it's a little bit different for everybody. This was just the platform to like put you in competition with your friends and kind of inspire you to keep going. So that was a really cool idea. The next one was Connectly, and their idea was really about like interrupting the times when you're using your screens as kind of your default. Like, I just don't really know what else to do right now, and this is the easiest thing kind of in any given moment to end up doing. And so their idea was about putting you into groups with some of your friends so that it could let you know when you're like both free, kind of in that moment where you're most likely to be just scrolling or watching YouTube, watching Netflix, and let you know that you're both free and that maybe you could do something else. You could connect with each other in that time. So I thought that was a really cool way of like breaking that habit of just doing the easiest possible thing, and instead inspiring people to connect in real life. And the last one was, their idea was basically, it was a hardware idea to attach to the back of your phone a like different kind of screen that would interrupt you as you were picking up your phone. So one of the insights that the speaker shared was that 9 out of 10 times we pick up our phones, it's out of habit. It's not in response to a notification. So they were kind of trying to see if they could interrupt, those 9 out of 10 times that you're picking up your phone with a different screen that would kind of offer you something different, either a moment of reflection of like, do you really want to be doing this right now? Or maybe some ways to like give you that kind of dopamine hit you're looking for without having to actually open your phone and then you get, like we all do, sucked into a million different things that you probably didn't intend to do. So those were kind of like, that was the spectrum of the kinds of ideas that people were coming up with. And I also, I recorded all the presentations. So if anybody's like interested in learning more about the kinds of things that people were working on, just let me know and I'd be happy to share anything that I can. And so lastly, what were the lessons that I learned from this experience? So from being there, from running it, and then also hearing some of the feedback from the people who came, this first point, I initially had it as like each one of these separately, but I realized that it's really all 3 of them coming together that created kind of like the magic that we experienced there. So the community element of it, everybody really enjoyed getting to connect with the other people there who cared about the same things that they did. It was kind of like a perfect size group where I think everybody talked to everybody at some point, and people really enjoyed that. And then also having the time to apply their creativity to these kinds of problems together. So the creativity, a lot of people really felt it like in relationship with the other people they were meeting and bouncing ideas around. And then also the fact that it was 2 full days. And so people were taking, 2 full days away from their job, away from school to just dedicate to this. And that let them really like think an idea through from start to finish to build something concrete. And that was a really positive experience. I was really worried about this being 2 days when I was planning it, and at different points was considering shortening it. And some people were even like, I wish it was longer. So I think that it was really important to have that much time to sort of see through these ideas more so than you maybe would in just a conversation with your friends where you're bouncing around ideas. Another aspect of it that I don't think I realized was so important to the people who were coming until I was there and I was talking to them was that it was like completely independently run. So a lot of the time hackathons are sponsored by a company, and that I think that's what a lot of people kind of go to in their mind when they hear the word hackathon. I've at times wondered if I shouldn't have even called it a hackathon. So if anybody has any feedback or ideas around that, I'm very open to it. But I think I could have talked about this more in advance and realized while I was there how important it was that this wasn't like about, using a specific company's technology to do something for them. It was just about solving the problem together. And, nobody outside of that room really was benefiting from the fact that we were doing that, other than, hopefully maybe some of these apps turn into something and lots of people will benefit. But it was completely independent. And I think that was more important than I realized beforehand. And the last lesson that really like blew me away, and it's kind of one of the things that I'm most excited to share, because I think if you haven't had an experience like this, it could help you take a step on something that you're working on, which is just how much people wanted to help when I was in the process of planning and executing this event. I was just blown away. I had many moments throughout the experience of planning it where I was shocked by how helpful people were. A few examples: both of the speakers were my first choice and the first people I emailed about this. I was like completely just blown away by how eager they both were to participate. That was really exciting. And it gave me this feeling of like, wow, I can like find people who are doing cool stuff and ask them to help me with stuff. That is so cool. So that was a really incredible experience. I also found this community really helpful and really supportive as I was planning and trying to promote the event. And so I think that is like one of the biggest things that I want to take away, is just knowing that when I want to do stuff like this, I'm going to find the people who want to be helpful, and that people are so much more willing to help than I probably would have guessed. Well, really than I did guess before I did it. And so, yeah, hopefully like with that knowledge and my experience, that can be useful to you at some point in the future too, just that people are so eager and willing to help. So the next thing is that I just wanted to hear from some of the people who came. I thought it was just going to be Sebastian. I think it's going to be Sebastian and Zin who are going to speak about their experience attending.
Hi, everyone. Zin, you can come up as well. Yeah, so Zin and I were participants of this hackathon. Did I click something? Is it still good? Can you hear me? Okay. I hope everything online is still good. Anyway, yes, we were participants on this hackathon, and Hannah kind of hit the nail on the head here, right? It's all about the connection and meeting new people and talking about different cool ideas. And I think that really helped me kind of distinguish what I wanted from or what kind of issues I saw with addictive technology. So kind of specifically, just talking with people in the hackathon, kind of communicating with them and processing my own concepts here, I realized that addictive technology has two parts to it. Right? It has the addictive component, but it also has the valuable component. And the hard part here is how to separate those two things out. Right? Let me give you an example. So YouTube is my kryptonite. And I'll get stuck, on YouTube Shorts, scrolling away. But then, that which kind of sucks, right? I'm kind of wasting my time. But then on the other hand, I find a lot of value and education from YouTube, right? So how do I extract the value of the education from the addictive aspect of the technology? Right? And so that was kind of the realization I kind of came to, this kind of two-part process here. And I was actually just talking to other people around the hackathon, and actually Zin had this interesting idea. He actually went to a group that was talking about exactly this, finding tools to separate out the value from the addictive technology. So I don't know, Zin, if you want to talk about that community.
For sure. There's this community called Tech Luddites in the States. Um, I think the current one is only based around like young adults, teenager, but mainly they want to literally live their lives without being on their phones all the time. And what they do instead is, well, they'll just normally hang out with their groups and not use their phone at all. And which got me thinking like, oh, there are existing communities out there. It's just not in Toronto. So it'd be really cool to start or to to start a community like that. And another thing is that attending the hackathon, I realized how important connections are. In that, so when I was forming the group, I went up to someone who had the same idea as me, and we were both keen. We both agreed on the idea that our phones literally may not be the problem because yes, even if I don't use my phone, there's another device like a laptop where I'll be checking my Slack or Gmail. And so maybe there's a deeper problem that needs to be addressed, that needs to be solved. And that's why our team focus more on connections, connecting friends and connecting friends to be in a community.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big theme here, right? Is just community, specifically around this idea of addictive technology, and sharing some of these ideas. Let's see if this works here. Okay. So by talking to the people at this hackathon, I actually found some actual like useful tools that I'm starting to implement now. So this is one of the apps that someone mentioned, this idea of 1 sec. The idea is you open up you subconsciously open up your YouTube account or your Instagram app or whatever it is. And this app will actually launch itself and say, hang on, just give yourself 1 second. Are you sure you want to go to YouTube? Are you sure you want to go to Instagram? And that breath gives you that stopping mechanism to say, hang on, maybe I don't actually want to go onto this application. Maybe I just subconsciously went onto this. And this was something that I had no idea existed. But because of this hackathon, because of the community, and because of all the people in the same room who had the same ideas of talking about addictive tech, I was able to learn about it. And the other thing I wanted to point out here is I was able to share the app that I use. So Freedom is the app that I use to both block apps during work hours and lock me out of the internet after 11 p.m. Right? Now, some of you might think that this is extreme, but literally these addictive technology programs have a supercomputer pointed at your brain, right? It's not about trying to just do it better. It's about trying to do it smarter, right? And so this is kind of the critical idea here of like, hey, I got ideas. I was able to share my ideas. And I think if we have communities like this, and we have more hackathons like this, then we can come together and think about these concepts and ideally be able to separate out that value from the addictive aspects of these technologies. Do you want to add anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like Sebastian mentioned, we already have existing community members who do really care about this topic. And so one of the stuff that we talked about during the hackathon was that, okay, instead of, reaching out to everybody, reaching out to a general audience and say, hey, look, tech are addictive, it may be more effective to reach out to existing community members and say, hey, I know that you don't like tech as much as I do. So why don't we gather and why don't we make a community out of it? I think that will be our next step. At least that's what I hope to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, so that's it. Some time now for questions. And then I'll also do a breakout for more questions and any feedback. Like I really want to do something like this again. So I'm looking for feedback from anyone who's willing to give it. So if you had any ideas based on what I shared, or thoughts for a future hackathon, please let me know.
So anyone in the room, hand up, and on a letter in the chat. Is that Jonathan already?
It is. Yes, thank you. Yeah, great topic. I've got a grandson, and I'm going to take away what you shared. Thanks very much for that. And here's my question. Somebody was talking about Pokemon Go, and one of the things I've been trying to do in my little town of Coburg is take the technology outdoors and get them back into nature, using it to try and help the municipality deal with extreme weather events and things like that, so that it doesn't become something that's overwhelming like the technology. Just everything is overwhelming these days. Give them something where the technology is not, it's actually supporting the building of those in-person relationships and solving a problem in the community. It's place-based. What are your thoughts on that in the Pokemon Go? Is there any way of making it more of a personally connected rather than just looking at your phones when you're out there walking around in nature?
An interesting idea. I'm not super familiar with Pokemon Go, so maybe some of the people who are have other ideas. But I do think that what I reacted to from what you're saying is that like so much of this technology kind of promises like human to human connection, but doesn't actually deliver on that. And so I think that those like creating more human connection is both just like good in general and helps people with this problem, because most people really would rather be like sitting and talking to their friends than scrolling on their phone. And the problem is that thing that we talked about where like sometimes it's just the easiest thing to do. And I think even sometimes we like forget how to get ourselves out of the house and interacting with other people. But I don't really know anything about Pokemon Go, so I can't apply it specifically to that. I don't know if anybody else who does play Pokemon Go has ideas.
Say something. It's actually really funny because I wish it was Pokemon Go that I was talking about, but it's actually a way more addictive phone game that is literally the card game on your phone. But I used to play Pokemon Go, and it was actually really awesome because that's how I started like walking in the city more and like kind of like exploring different areas. So I think, yes, maybe you are like kind of staring at your phone, but I think it was a good thing to get people out, and there were so many people with their kids out too more, and I thought that was really awesome, like exploring like the city and like having to go. Obviously there's some negatives of it because you'd see like swarms of like people at like certain places and they would get really like hectic for drivers and stuff, but I don't know, it did get people out. So
Yeah, I
people
was
out and
thinking,
talking to each other.
sorry. Yeah, I was just thinking like we get them outdoors and then we get them doing things like removing invasive species, planting trees and riparian zones, that kind of stuff.
So I had a question. Firstly, by the way, amazing that you put this together. Sounded really cool. So well done for doing that. I've just got a question about like the projects and the kind of like how far they were able to get in a day, and were they able to kind of make something that started to work, or like how far they were able to get.
Yeah, so I think different teams kind of prioritize it differently. One of the like goals that we had for the teams was to have a like demoable prototype. And so some teams really did that more so in like a Figma and wireframes and that kind of a prototype. And there were a couple of teams who leaned more into like coding a full prototype. I think that yeah, I think both are really cool, and I liked being able to bring together people with different backgrounds. So there were a lot of like design-oriented people there who maybe couldn't have done the coded prototype thing if that was a requirement. But it sort of depended on the team and what they prioritized.
I'll also echo the kudos. I know how much work it is to organize a hackathon, and for you to have done it single-handedly is like that's like a really huge accomplishment. And I guess, and I do hope that you do more. Do you have any hunches yet about what the topic might be? Could it be something similar or be quite different?
I definitely have a lot of different ideas. I also kind of trying to like bring ideas in from people who came and just from people in the community in general. I mean, I'm really passionate about like the environmental impact of a lot of different technologies. I'd love to do something around that. I haven't figured out yet if that would be like a great topic for a general audience or not. Like if that would kind of require a different skill set when we're talking about like the environmental impact of like data centers and things like that. But I think that's definitely an issue that like I would love to see more people working on. I've also thought a lot about misinformation. I think that would be a really interesting one to get people thinking about as well. Definitely tricky, and I think there are other people out there trying to work on it, but I think that's another topic that I find really interesting. And yeah, I'm like open to suggestions as well.
Those sound great. I'm also curious about like any reflections you have on promotion. Like I think that one of the hardest challenges that you had for this event was like getting the word out about it. You didn't have like a sponsor with money or like a giant network to tap into to get the word out about it. And so like, do you have any reflections on like how you promoted it, how you would promote differently in the future? And I'm asking that question in part because like as a volunteer with Civic Tech Toronto, who we're thinking about like, how do we get this event, which has been around for 9 years, like how do we get this event in front of more new people in the city? So I'm curious if there are like lessons that you learned that we could also apply.
Yeah, so I tried lots of different things. I definitely felt like I was leaning in a lot to like personal interaction. So coming here and meeting people was helpful. I went to some other like networking type of events and met people that way. And that sort of felt like the conversation required to get someone interested felt like it was a little bit longer. And so having those personal interactions was helpful. It's definitely not the most scalable strategy. I was posting a lot on LinkedIn, which was kind of hard for me at first, but I started to get used to it. And I ended up having only one person sign up just from a LinkedIn post. So I'm not entirely sure if that was a good strat. Like if that was just like I hadn't kind of figured it out quite yet and stretched it to like the potential that it really had, or if it just wasn't a great area to put my time into. I do think next time I would try to have a little bit of a more coherent content strategy for LinkedIn and be a little bit more consistent promoting that and see if that meant that more people showed up from LinkedIn. One thing I did learn there was that like videos were a lot more effective. So I started having to record videos of myself talking about the hackathon, and those posts seemed to go a lot farther, which was interesting to learn. And then I think I also, at the beginning, wasn't really like tapping into my community well enough. Someone from like the grad school program that I graduated from found it on LinkedIn and promoted it to people there. And then like kind of that gave me the idea of like, I should be promoting this to the entire like students and alumni network of that program. And we ended up having 5 students drive in from Pittsburgh to come to the hackathon, which was like insanely cool. And so I think that was like, I think that I didn't tap into various networks that I have like that well enough. And to be totally honest, maybe too honest, a part of that I think was that initially I was pretty scared to like fully put this out there and to tell people I'm doing this thing and I really have no idea how it's going to go. And then over time, I was like getting more and more desperate for people to sign up. So I was just like, I'm just going to do it. And it ended up like not being so scary after doing it a few times. And I think really had like much better results the more I was willing to tap into all of these different networks. But yeah, I definitely don't feel like I like fully cracked the code. And we'll probably be trying more things next time too.
What were the reasons that you found that people chose to participate in their hackathon? Because a lot of hackathons out there. What were the draws?
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest things were the topic. People were interested in the topic. It is something that kind of touches a lot of people in different ways, whether it's like they're frustrated with their own phone use or somebody in their life. So I think that was a big part of it. And then I also think the like independent angle, I think I could have like highlighted that a lot more, but there were some people there who did kind of mention, like, I don't usually want to go to a hackathon if it's like sponsored by, you know, one of the big tech companies, because they sort of feel like, why should I work for you for free? Or they just don't feel as inspired by that. So I think that the fact that it was like completely independent, and people could really just like kind of let their creativity run wild on this problem, that was important to them. I think those are probably the two biggest reasons. There were also a fair number of the students who came were like, they're students, so they were kind of looking for like portfolio pieces and stuff like that. And so I think it was still, for most of them, they cared about the topic. There's like lots of opportunities to create portfolio pieces, but I think the combination of those two things made it like a really good fit for them in that moment.
Did you think at all about opening it up to, I guess, a greater variety of groups? I'm just personally thinking of like maker spaces and stuff like that. I know hardware is maybe not doable in 2 days, although there was a stupid shit hackathon. There have been a couple. And I think sometimes just getting different perspectives might be fun. I don't know, like I can get you in contact with a couple of those places because I know they're often very interested in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that would be really cool. Like, I would say the only reason I didn't do it is I didn't think of it, but like, that sounds really cool. And I think I really like the idea of bringing together people with different backgrounds and different perspectives, because I think that you can just like end up with something so so different from what like any one person would have come up with on their own.
In terms of getting stuff done and stuff, have you thought about doing follow-up, or
What do you mean?
having some mechanism of continuing the
Oh.
projects?
Yes. So I love that idea. I really want people to feel like they can carry their projects forward if they're interested. Something I had explored early on in the planning process that I ended up kind of leaving behind was seeing if I could get like a VC sponsorship, if I could find like a social impact VC who would be willing to participate and help teams out. There were a few reasons I kind of like left that idea behind, but that was like one idea I had for how people could kind of carry their idea forward. And I think that, you know, the other thing that like at this moment I have to offer people is just the connection with like the expert speaker, for example, who's like researching these projects, interested in things like this, knows other people in tech who are working on things like this. So I think that that would be like another kind of resource that I could offer to connect people with him. But yeah, I mean, I would love to have lots that I could offer the teams if they want to like keep working on these projects and keep them going. And I'm just sort of figuring out like what those things are, what I should invest in like building in terms of having some sort of resources to offer.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Jonathan had another question.
Yeah, we used to have Code Across Toronto with Civic Tech Toronto, and I guess COVID killed it. Can you imagine what your hackathon experience might be like for Civic Tech Code Across Toronto?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
How would you apply what you did as an independent to this volunteer organization that in the past have organized an annual event called Code Across Toronto?
Okay, so I don't know what Code Across Toronto is. One thing I should mention about my background is I haven't lived in Toronto for the last 8 years. So I think I was missing like certain parts of the Toronto tech community. So I don't know specifically what that is. I think that in terms of connecting it to Civic Tech Toronto, I think it was really helpful that we had like so many people from Civic Tech participating, and that sort of, I think, brought some of the mindset and some of the things that people have learned here into that environment, as well as taught people there who are not aware of this, like about this space, and that if they're interested in continuing to pursue ideas like this, they could come and participate. But yeah, I'm not sure what Code Across Toronto is, so I can't speak specifically to that.
So we're going to get 2 breakouts. Everybody give a nice round of applause to Hannah.